Facebook bigla or something.
YouTube with the CHUBE.
Ganon?
Okay, now live. Hold on a minute. Hindi pa. It's still setting up.
Do you need to press record pa ba, Amy, or it's automatic?
Yes, thanks for reminding me. Thank you for that. Hindi siya automatic.
Kasi di ba, after natapos and then you realize hindi pala na-record.
Right? That's usually the case.
Malupit yun. Si
So,
Professor, di ba, yung nakamute pala siya throughout his whole lecture.
Okay, we're on.
Better that than the guy with the cat filter on.
All right.
Yeah, Dina, go ahead.
Good morning. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat, or kung meron man sa atin nag-tune in from other parts of the world. Good day to everyone. Welcoming you all the way from Cervantes, Ilocos Sur. At si Amy nasa Laguna at ang ating mga speakers nasa Manila. Diba? Kami ang mga swerte na nasa probinsya. So, welcome to everyone and good morning, and thank you for joining us today. On the for the fifth year, we are celebrating our, should I say, self-declared National Day of Silence or Katahimikan.
Yes.
Kasi I think siguro just a brief background, especially for those joining us for the first time. 5 years ago, Amy came up with this idea that we remember something else or celebrate something else during this day, which is usually all about recalling what happened many years ago during the EDSA revolution. So usually this day is celebrated with a lot of rallies, a lot of noise, siguro recalling periods of anger and violence. So parang it was a welcome contrast, no, to the usual way that this day is celebrated. So we started out, if I remember correctly, in BGC, and we did mindfulness, meditation, a few talks, and that was the start. No? So for the last 4 years, we've been doing this as an outdoor event and open to the public. And last year, I think was the first time we had several speakers who joined us and gave talks. So, and a lot of the people who attended also welcomed that format. So this year, we are doing the event online for obvious reasons that we cannot gather together. And most of us are still observing quarantine. So, but I think the event lends well also to this platform or to this format, because then it allows us to bring in more people from different parts of the country and maybe the world who may not be able to join us otherwise in a live event. No, kasi I remember at one point, for the last 4 years, we've also been broadcasting on Facebook Live, right, Amy?
Yes, we had been. Yes.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was beautiful because last year we had the Taal eruption. And then, then right after that, this COVID, before it was declared a pandemic and before we were all locked down, nakasingit tayo.
Sandwich tayo.
So we were able to do it live, and it was such a beautiful day. And we were joined by like around 100 people at Ayala Triangle Gardens, and then we had 5 teachers on our roster. So it was just so fabulous, and what a blessing that was, no? And this year, of course, I was like, okay, ano na, tutuloy ba natin, di ba? But like, there's no way na pwede tayong mag-miss ng year, because first of all, we're the only country in the whole world that has a self-declared National Day of Mindfulness. Seriously, kasi di ba, I work with International Mindfulness Teachers Association. The president of IMTA donated or had supported our sound system last year. Tapos sabi niya, buti pa kayo, even here in America, we don't have National Day of Mindfulness.
Oh, di ba?
So that's something to be proud of. And I just heard from someone recently also that they couldn't believe that, even, I guess, somebody who I'm mentoring, she has a friend in Indonesia who said, what? There's a National Day of Mindfulness in the Philippines? So I think that, you know, we have to congratulate ourselves, right? For leading the way. Diba? yeah, and also what you mentioned, Dina, that when we started this, kasi it was 5 years ago during the campaigns for the elections, presidential elections, and things were getting a little bit feeling a little uncomfortable, and so Beth, was
Yeah, si Beth, started this all. Actually, we have to give her credit
yeah, Beth
for
was
that.
always like sending messages, gawin natin to, gawin natin to. So I was like, okay, let's do it.
Gusto niya flash mob, di ba? Flash mob
Oo.
meditation. Yung pupunta
Yes.
ka lang sa mall, tapos biglang uupo, tapos magme-meditate.
Doon nga,
Ayan,
we were
yan
gonna
ang
do it in Greenbelt,
initial
diba?
idea. Oo.
So, but and that's how it started. And we decided to make it EDSA Revolution Day because everyone has the day off. And then it was really symbolic, very symbolic of we began as National Day of Mindfulness, or the Day of
Or
Mindfulness.
silence.
Hindi pa national yun eh. The second year was when I decided, sige, National Day of Mindfulness na lang. But the first year was National Day of Silence, and we invited the country to be in silence with us because of all of the noise that was happening all around. And then it became tradition for us that every year on this very day, on EDSA Revolution Day, which is very symbolic for our freedom as Filipinos, that we come together and really bring this country together, our families, our communities, and so that we can develop this practice, that we can find peace within ourselves and throughout the country. And then maybe, hopefully, that will ripple out through the world. Because we have Filipino siblings, brothers and sisters and family and loved ones, and even the important strangers that are from the Filipino descent that are all over the world. So we can definitely make a difference when we come together. And Beth, do you want to say something?
Let's go, Beth.
Yeah, thank you
Ayaw mo yan.
for joining us. Let's hope that we're going to get through everything in life. Let's just focus on what is present and trust that whatever it is, it's for the best of everything.
Thank you, Beth.
May
Yes.
busina pa talaga. Talagang kinonfirm ang message mo. Merong talagang,
Merong support pa from the background. Baka jeepney pa yun eh. Yes, Philippines! So, okay, well, I would also like to invite, there's a very good friend of mine who has been a very, very big part of the mind or the meditation, beyond mindfulness, but the meditation movement here in the country. And he is very active in really bringing communities together within the Buddhist communities and also the meditation communities in the country, and stretching beyond that. So he had spent time in Myanmar maybe a few years ago, 3 years ago yata yun, 4 years ago, when he traveled around Myanmar to get more acquainted and to really get to know better the roots of this practice that we are all so privileged to practice now, how it's spread. And so right now there's a coup d'etat that's happening in Myanmar, and it's again lining up with this day, our intention of bringing peace and silence and connectedness to oneself and others through this practice here on EDSA Revolution Day. And it would be great to hear from you, Mon, and really just give us your statement of support for Myanmar. So you can unmute.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I just posted what I'm going to read on the group chat. I actually have I'm recovering from flu, so my voice is a bit rough, and I just hope that I'm coming across well. No, you can hear me properly. Okay, so thank you, Amy, for this opportunity. I made this statement, and the signatory for this statement is the Philippine Theravada Buddhist Fellowship. But anyone who endorses Any group that endorses this statement can add to it. This is public domain, and hopefully it can lend moral support to the people of Myanmar. Okay, so without further ado, because we have a lot of speakers and a lot of activities today, let me read the statement. Okay, you can read it with me. So, statement for the Day of Mindfulness. Araw ng Katahimikan, the Day of Mindfulness, coincides with the commemoration of the People Power Revolution that occurred 35 years ago in 1986. People Power was a nonviolent uprising by the Filipino people from various sectors: disgruntled security forces, priests, nuns, students, etc., working together to overthrow a dictatorship. This was a, this was a historical fact acknowledged even today by the declaration of February 25 as a national holiday. 5 years ago, the first Araw ng Katahimikan was purposely designed to coincide with this national holiday, to add an element of interiority and mindfulness into a day that was beginning to lose its significance as the country continues to grapple with national issues that remain unsolved by the so-called People Power Revolution. For as long as the hearts and minds of people remain tainted with ignorance, fear, ill will, and greed, we will never be able to properly and effectively provide. I'm sorry, I lost it. To provide, for as long as the hearts and minds of people remain tainted with ignorance, fear, ill will, and greed, we will never be able to properly and effectively provide solutions to the national problems affecting our personal and daily lives. Following the Buddha's teaching that hate cannot overcome hate, but only love can, we need to develop a mind heart of Metta, not just as isolated individuals, but as collective sentient beings. Just like the original people power, we need to do this together as a people, soldiers and civilians, religious and lay, rich and poor, powerless and powerful, etc. Unlike the original people power that relied solely on prayers and miraculous intervention, this mindfulness movement relies on persistent discipline in developing a heart mind of empathy, compassion, loving kindness, and equanimity in the face of difficulties, failure, and vicissitudes in our life. It also relies on a mind heart open to the suffering of others beyond the comfortable zones of our personal worlds. Today, the people of Myanmar are facing similar problems that Filipinos faced 35 years ago when a dictatorship stole a democratically held election and threatened to uphold a repressive political system. Let us remember that as meditators or members of the mindfulness movement, we owe much to the Burmese meditation traditions that may have directly or indirectly influenced the worldwide mindfulness meditation phenomenon. We owe it to the people of Myanmar to remember this in this moment of their national crisis. May we act as one people and send thoughts and well wishes to Myanmar during our session today. To the Myanmar soldiers and civilians, religious and lay, Buddhist and non-Buddhist, rich and poor, powerless and powerful, even to both oppressed and oppressors. May we be able to do this with wisdom and proper understanding of the situation in Myanmar. Let us wish for a peaceful and wise resolution to the current issue besetting our countries. May we all be happy, well, and liberated from all forms of suffering. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mon. That's beautifully written, and thank you. I, it's you have mentioned some really key, important facets there, because mindfulness did come from a tradition. It's 2,600 years old. So we want to honor that, and we give due respect to the fact that this practice is not something that is made up in these modern times, but there is a tradition and a lineage that it's followed. And so the Burmese tradition, or in Myanmar, it really has helped to bring mindfulness to people, most particularly lay people who are not monastics, to be able to practice this mindfulness and also many other practices that help to change our lives. And it's just such a wonderful thing, Mon, all that you're doing and supporting that, because I know that you've spent time there in Myanmar as well. So thank you for that. So, and for those, yes, thank you, attorney, that you have reposted the statement in our chat box. So for those who would like to read it, it's there in the chat box. Meanwhile, I would like to get us started already. We do have here, so we have Eileen is our first teacher. Okay, and I'm trying to find Eileen here so I can spotlight you. Where are you? There you are. Yay! Okay, good. So there she is. So Eileen is a fabulous woman, and there's really, like, you know, I'm not gonna try to just give a short introduction because she deserves definitely this very formal and long introduction. So Eileen is the co-founder and co-director of White Space Wellness. And she's a certified mindfulness meditation teacher, a credentialed yoga teacher trainer, a certified eating psychology coach, a Reiki 3rd degree teacher, and a retreat facilitator. She holds a master's degree in philosophy from the Ateneo de Manila University with a focus on Eastern thought, and has also studied under Dr. Nicholas Sutton and Dr. Jessica Fraser of the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies. Eileen combines a decade-old mindfulness practice rooted in Vipassana, yoga, and Zen with an academic understanding of Hindu and Buddhist philosophies, and is also a student of world-renowned meditation teachers, Dr. Tara Brock and Dr. Jack Kornfield. She's taught mindfulness workshops to government agencies, multilateral agencies, multinational fast-moving consumer goods companies, multinational financial firms, and multinational business process outsourcing firms, and has consistently received exceptional ratings for her clear, systematic, and often irreverent teaching style and ability to convey abstract, complex, or technical knowledge in a lucid and accessible manner. Besides her native Philippines, she has taught in Indonesia, Japan, and New Zealand. So welcome, Eileen. Thank you for being here again, and I will give you the floor.
Okay. Thanks, Aimee. So I'm a little better at listening to those introductions. My toes were curling a little less. And so thank you, everyone. Thank you, Aimee and Dina and Beth, for organizing this on everyone's behalf. And for those of you who made the time and really carved out a slot in your schedule to participate in this, thank you so much. Well, I can't think of a better way to kick off an introduction to mindfulness meditation than by leading a short practice on mindfulness meditation. So the instructions are designed to be accessible to people who are complete beginners. For those of you who've been doing this for a while, beginner's mind is the invitation. Okay, so if you're sitting in a chair, just allow your feet to be on the floor as wide apart as your hips. You can rest your hands on your lap or anywhere else that's comfortable for the shoulders. And then just feeling your connection to the ground that's supporting you. Just allow yourselves to grow as tall as you can. And then just roll the shoulders forwards, upwards, and back. Repeat the movement 2 to 3 times. Shake your head, if you will. And just take a few moments to sense if there are any habitual tension patterns that you're holding. And to just let that soften and release without a sense of strain or striving. Okay, so just noticing any rigid set of the jaw or any rigidity in the shoulders, and just allowing everything to drop down. Allow the cheeks to be soft. Allow the forehead to be smooth. Soften your gaze, or if you wish, just close your eyes altogether. And gently surrendering any anxieties, any concerns, any preoccupations or agendas that you might have brought with you into this session. Just beginning to tether your awareness now to the breath as it comes in and as it goes out. So just breathing in and being aware that you're breathing in. Breathing out and just being aware that you're breathing out. Not changing how you're breathing in any way. Just letting the breath breathe itself and just paying attention. And maybe if you wish, paying closer attention to the sensations that arise in the body as you inhale and as you exhale. So as you breathe in, you might feel the air touching the inner walls of your nostrils. You might feel the shoulders rising. You might feel the chest or the belly expanding. And as you exhale, perhaps noticing how the shoulders drop, how the belly moves in towards the spine, how the air is a little warmer when it touches your upper lip. And if paying attention to all the bodily sensations is a bit too much, then feeling free to anchor your attention to just one part of the body where the breath is most visible to you. And that could be the rise and fall of the shoulders, or it could be the outward and inward movement of your stomach. And when your mind wanders, and it will very often, just setting aside the distraction and gently shepherding your attention back to the body and back to the breath. And also allowing the quality of your attention to be soft and warm and receptive. Just witnessing your breath with a loving awareness. And just doing this on your own for 8 to 10 more cycles of the breath. Breathing in, just being aware of the breath as it comes in. Breathing out, just being aware of the breath as it goes out. And before we end this brief practice, just taking a few moments to pause and just to notice any shifts that might have occurred in your experience. Just noticing how it feels in the body, how it feels in the heart, and how it feels in the mind. And if you don't notice any changes, being perfectly willing to receive your experience as it is. And taking your time, if you happen to have closed your eyes, you may choose to open them now. So good morning once again. I hope that gave you a chance to collect the body and to calm the mind to whatever extent it was available to you this morning. And so the subject of my discussion this morning is Reality as Refuge, is the title. And the subtitle is Regaining a Sense of Presence and Perspective Through Mindfulness. Okay. Now, when I gave that title to Aimee, I realized that I had made a bit of a controversial statement, because the very idea of reality as refuge occurs contentious to many people. Reality is something that many of us take refuge from rather than take refuge in. And the ways that we find refuge from reality are manifold. Some of us choose to take refuge from reality by binge watching our favorite shows on Netflix. Some of us choose to open our favorite pint of ice cream. Some of us reach for a big bag of chips. Some of us play with our puppies. And so we've got a variety of ways, really, that we try to find a sense of sanctuary, because let's face it, these are extraordinarily distressing times for the global population. Some of us are feeling that distress more acutely than others, but I think it's safe to say that all of us are having a hard time. And so to the degree that reality is distressing, that's also the degree to which many of us are fleeing from reality, whether that's ignoring what's happening, or distracting ourselves from what's happening, or underplaying the significance of what's happening. And none of that is wrong. Okay? None of that is morally reprehensible. None of that instinct to evade or to escape is wrong. This is part of the conditioning. And so it's fine. That's the first thing I want to say. It's not workable many times, but it doesn't make us bad people, and it doesn't make us failures. Yeah. Now the subtitle is, so let's set aside the controversial first part of the title first, and let's look into the second one. The second one is where I say that we can regain presence, we can regain perspective, we can shift our relationship to reality through this practice that is called mindfulness. Okay, so that's less contentious. So I'm going to kind of move my way through using that as the opening. So all of you who, at the very least, started this session with that mindfulness meditation practice, okay, with that guided practice on mindfulness of the body and the breath, you will have had some brief immersion or exposure to the umbrella of mindfulness practices. Now, just as a show of hands, how many of you are veterans to this? Okay, you can use the hand raise function in Zoom. So how many of you have been doing this for a while? And for a while means longer than 5 minutes. Okay, just a show of hands, just so I kind of have a sense of the audience. How many of you have been doing this for a while? I see 3 hands, and I refuse to believe that that's the case, because a whole bunch of these names here are familiar to me. Okay, so for those of you who've been doing mindfulness meditation for a while, doesn't have to be a very long while. For any of you who've sat down, spent some time focusing on your breath, or focusing on body sensations, or focusing on sounds, one of the very first things that will present itself to your awareness is discomfort. Okay? So there you are, you're sitting 1 minute, 2 minutes, and suddenly your nose is itching, your scalp is itching, there's an ant crawling across your foot, your knee is throbbing, your lower back is aching, your hands are going numb. And so when we sit for any appreciable amount of time, we start getting present to discomfort. Yeah, there are physical varieties of discomfort, just like what I described. And then there are emotional discomforts. If you're new to meditation and the teacher hasn't said anything for 30 seconds, the bell still hasn't rung, we start feeling bored. We start feeling restless. We start getting fidgety. We start feeling impatience. Some of us start feeling rage. Like, why is she not ringing the bell? When is this going to end? Okay, this is not what I signed up for. And then besides the emotional discomforts, there are the mental discomforts. Okay, the thought loops that provoke anxiety or induce our distress or deepen our terror. Things like, when is this pandemic going to end? Is the vaccine a conspiracy? Can we rely on the government to give us supplies? Am I ever going to find meaningful employment again? What's going to happen to my children? Are they going to be left behind? Are they going to be the lost generation of COVID? And so we've got all these thoughts, which are deeply uncomfortable. And so when we sit to meditate, this is one of the very first things we begin to wrestle with, which is the sheer discomfort of being alive. There's just so much stress, physical, emotional, mental. And when we're not meditating, these discomforts are things we live with all the time. They're constant. But when we meditate, it's the first time that we actually get to see them with a little bit of clarity, because our attention is focused on what's happening. Okay. Now, some of you might be wondering, actually, no, I'm not focusing on the discomforts. I'm focusing on my breath, like the teacher said. I'm focusing on sounds, like my teacher said. So how can I pay attention to all these discomforts? And so I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about that, because when I was new to meditation, I spent a number of years thinking that the breath and the body were the point. And so I spent a lot of years suffering needlessly, because I kept beating myself up because I could never sustain my attention on the breath for too long. I could never sustain my attention on whatever it is the teacher was telling me I should focus on. And so for those of you who are new to this, let me reassure you that these are not the point. Okay? In mindfulness meditation, there are objects that we traditionally focus on, the breath and the body being one of them. But I do want to point out, these are not the point. My teacher, Jack, who is also Aini's teacher, he puts it very cheekily. He says, we're not here to be professional breathers. Okay? So no one's going to grade you for how straight you're sitting, how deeply you're breathing. That's really not it. Okay? The objects, we call them anchors within the tradition. They're really just ways of tethering our attention to the present moment, because our brains are not designed literally to stay focused on the present. So if you begin to notice and observe your own cognitions, you'll notice that the vast majority of them are things that happened in the past or things that happen in the future. And so being present to the present, pardon the repetition, is actually challenging for the human brain. And so all these things that we focus on, they're not the point. What they're there for is to help keep our attention trained on the present moment, on what's happening right now. Because if you think about it, what all these objects have in common is that they all arise in the present. Okay? When you breathe, you have to breathe right now. When you pay attention to sounds, you're paying attention to the sounds right now. When you're paying attention to sensations, you're paying attention to the sensations you're feeling right now. So the objects are not the point. You're not failing if you can't keep your mind on them forever. You can't anyway. They're really just there as tools so that we can keep our awareness focused on reality as it is right now. So we can focus on the life that's unfolding right now, as my other teacher, Tara, puts it. So these are just tools. What we're really after is reality as it is. That's what we're really attending to. And everything else, they're just props. And so when we attend to reality as it is, okay, that's when we start getting that world of discomfort I was talking about. All the itches, twitches, aches, pains, complaints, rants, and so on and so forth. Now, that's just one thing. And that entire umbrella, that entire world of discomfort, in the Buddhist tradition, that's one of the 3 marks of existence, dukkha. Our Tagalog word for it is actually the same, dukkha. Okay? Life is fundamentally unsatisfactory. It's hard. It's hard to be alive. It's not personal. It's not our fault. We're not failing. You don't even have to be human. It's just part of the hardware. The moment we incarnate, it's tough. The moment we're born, we start getting old. We get sick, we die. We lose people we love. That's just part of it. Okay? The universe is not singling you out. COVID is just one of 3, 4 major pandemics to hit us in the 20th to 21st century. So it's not personal. It's part of the package. In the Buddhist tradition, they have a poetic way of saying it. Okay? To be alive means to be exposed to the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. It's what it means to exist. Okay? That's the first mark. Now, if you've been meditating for 2, 3, 5 minutes, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 10 days, the other thing that you'll also start noticing is the constant change. Okay? Your sensations are always changing. 1 minute you're cold, the next moment you're hot. Could be, you're just at that stage of life. 1 minute you're hungry, the next moment you're not. 1 minute you're reminiscing about an old flame, the next moment you're anticipating a vacation. And so our sensations, our emotions, our thoughts are always, always, always changing within seconds, within moments. And we get acutely aware of this when we meditate. Okay? I remember one of the things I realized after a few years of meditation was how schizophrenic my inner world was. Very, very different personalities, all inhabiting the same space between my ears. Now, this isn't new. As Aimee said earlier, this is part of the tradition. And the Buddhists call this another of the marks of existence, anicca, impermanence. Nothing lasts, everything changes. 1 moment it's ECQ, the next moment it's MECQ, the next moment it's GCQ, the next moment we need to invent a new alphabet because we run out of letters for these ECQs. Things are always changing. We have no idea what's going on. And we get present to that when we meditate. So when we meditate, we're not sitting down to breathe. Really, we don't need to sit down to breathe. We are giving ourselves an opportunity to get reacquainted with these fundamental characteristics of reality. That it's hard and it's not forever. And I know, a bunch of you are saying, I knew that. I didn't need to listen to this to know that. It doesn't take, you don't need to be a quantum physicist to get these things. But here's the thing, many of us know this intellectually. We know them as hashtags on Instagram. Okay, so we know them here, but we don't know them here. We don't live from these truths. Okay, because if we did, we'd have far less drama in our lives. Okay, So we know it here. We get that life is conceptually hard, and we get that life conceptually changes all the time. But we move on with the rest of our day, implicitly believing that life can be easy or should be easy, and that things can stay the same. So it's that gap between our expectations and reality as it is that actually causes our suffering. And even this gap is not our fault. We live in a culture that continuously bombards us with these messages. You know, the moment we start feeling any discomfort, you know, medicate it away, fix it, find an expert, find a psychotherapist. It's a culture that really teaches us to fix distress, to fix discomfort. Okay, how did teacher Jack call it? The airbag culture. Okay, we live in an airbag society where at the least impact, poof, we're insulated. Okay, and so what meditation, what mindfulness meditation especially really offers, is just a chance to rub our noses, pardon my French, to rub our noses in reality as it is. Okay, to start seeing all over again on a gut and a heart level, not a head level, that things are tough and that things always change. And it's not punishment. You could be a cockroach or a mayfly and it'd still be hard and things would still change. Okay. In fact, if you have a human incarnation, you're on the better end of the spectrum, because as the American Tibetan Buddhist nun Pema Chodron once said, you've got a shot out of the suffering if you're human. A little harder if you're a cockroach and some human steps on you. Okay. So this is actually good news. Being here is good news. And I'm going to say another controversial statement. Consider that our job in life is not to be comfortable. Consider that our task in life is to learn how to awaken regardless of the circumstances. And where awakening is concerned, COVID-19 presents both peril and possibility. We can wake up big time or we can shut down big time. And the choice is really up to us. Now, I'm going to stop there because Aimee only gave all of us 30 minutes, which works out in her favor, because if you show up to next year's Katahimikan, I will tell you about the third mark of existence. Okay, so I'm plugging next year's event. So if you're curious to know what the third mark is, you have to attend next year. But if the date changes, don't take it against us. Life just changes, okay? So that's just reality as it is. All right.
Thank you, Eileen. That was beautiful. And yes, too short, too short. Yeah, bitin. And yes, now this is something to look forward to for next year. And hopefully next year we will be back outdoors at the park together in person. And really just like with more time together. I do want to let everybody know that the reason why we shortened today's Katahimikan, this year's Katahimikan, is because I think a lot of us have like screen fatigue and burnout being online. So we wanted to take that into consideration. And this is a part of what we're dealing with too. There's also suffering and hardship in that, right, Eileen? So Eileen has talked to us about being okay in the discomfort of things, that things are hard, but this practice is certainly going to help us get through this in a way that feels more awake, and we're facing things, reality as it is, and at the same time, it does soothe us as well. There's a balm in this practice when we meditate. So thanks, Eileen, for your being here and all of your wise words. Really appreciate you. So I don't want to talk for too long to take up Rhea's time slot, but I would like to introduce Rhea. Rhea and I actually have known each other for quite a few years already, and it's so lovely to have her here. Rhea is a yoga and meditation facilitator. She's an educator and licensed psychologist from the Philippines. She specializes in psychological assessment and integrates embodiment, movement, and mindfulness in her practice of psychotherapy. She believes that change begins with awareness, presence, and tenderness. As an educator in various types of learning environments for over 20 years, she hopes to co-create nourishing spaces that empower others in discovering the personal path to wellness through trauma-informed, accessible, mental health-aware practices, such as yoga, embodiment, meditation, and mindfulness. She's trained in alternative healing modalities such as traditional Chinese medicine, traditional Thai massage, and trauma-informed yoga and yoga therapy, and is an accessible yoga ambassador. As a mental health professional, she regularly conducts workshops and trainings on mental health and facilitates wellness and mindfulness programs for individuals, corporations, and organizations locally and internationally. Rhea is a self-confessed emotional eater. Her struggle with weight has opened her up to new ways of celebrating her body and treating herself with love and compassion. Her nurturing yet playful classes are relaxing while being surprisingly challenging. She emphasizes building strength and functionality in movement while harnessing softness in the body and mind, and encourages folks to contemplate on what things might be like if we moved from a place of possibility rather than expectation. Beautiful, Rhea. So thank you for being here. I give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Amy. And I too was curling my toes as I listened through that introduction. But yeah, so I'm coming in here today as I'm going to pick on Eileen's words for a little bit. I'm going to be that psychotherapist airbag for a little bit as I start out this discussion. And as an educator, I do have a visual presentation to share today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And this just might be a resource for some of us. I know Amy had talked about Zoom fatigue, and sometimes having something to look at can feel relatively easeful. So if that's true for you, feel free to look at the screen. If you'd like to minimize the presentation, just move the tab a little bit so that you could focus on the speaker view if that's more comfortable for you. Before I begin sharing about how mindfulness has become part of my practice as a therapist and in the mental health profession, I'd like to first acknowledge the traditions and the lineages of both yoga and psychology. Let me rephrase that, of mindfulness and psychology, and recognizing the work of the leaders past, present, and emerging. And I am grateful for the opportunity to share this and to be part of this continued learning process. Right. So Eileen had said that, life is hard, and that's really part of the whole package. As a psychologist, one of the things that made mindfulness a little difficult for me to step into in the beginning, to be honest, was the fact that I was taught that, yeah, life is hard and I can do something about it. I have to do something about it. I need to fix it. And in fact, when Dina, who's been such a great mentor to me, invited me to study and really immerse in this practice of mindfulness, I pushed it aside and I said, I don't really need this. I already studied it. I know better. And that was that, attitude of, I'd call it supremacy, of privilege, of not being open to what is present, and really just putting myself on that hierarchy that, I am an academic trained practitioner, and mental health care needs that professional service. I'm not going to say don't believe in parts of that anymore, but I've come to see how mindfulness is such an essential tool as an adjunct to therapy, because we can't fix everything. We can't make life easier, but we can gain the skills and the tools to hold ourselves in kindness, in tenderness, in compassion, in living the life as it is with more ease and grace. And that's hopefully what I can share with you today. So, as I was saying in the beginning, this is how I viewed mental health. And I felt that coming into mindfulness was an easy escape to having to deal with life's harshness. But as we've experienced, for those who might have been practicing mindfulness or meditation or even yoga, you might have noticed that it's not easy, right? It is still hard. So the mindfulness practice and really adding that on to my toolkit of well-being has allowed me to see that there's really much more to mental health care than the medications we prescribe or the doctors prescribe, the processes in therapy that we've adhered to for many, many years. They may still be very important parts of the process. But coming into that awareness, and if you look at the psychology in general, that's really what it's about. But in a way, if I may be bold to say, and this might be a controversial statement as well, in some ways we may have co-opted these traditions of practices that have long existed before we started studying the brain, the mental processes, and so on and so forth. So why am I sharing this? I'm sharing this because at this day and age, we think of mental health um, as one aspect. But when we look at it from a broader perspective, from this multidimensional perspective, we can see how valuable that body, heart, mind relationship comes in to being mentally healthy. But beyond that, it's also recognizing the importance of spirit, of community, and of access to resources, right? And that might be internal resources of our own or external resources that come with communities of care, come with government structures, and so on and so forth. So that's how I find that mindfulness can be a good support for our mental health. But if we were to look at it really at this present time, and I think I'll be more succinct to this because, um, we are in this global pandemic and it's made life even harder than it used to be, if I could say that. And if we really consider this pandemic, the next thing that happens really, and it's already showing up, is that the bigger pandemic that emerges from this coronavirus is the mental health impact. And Amy was asking me earlier about my work as a therapist, and yes, I do see a lot of people needing mental health support. But how can mindfulness and this practice really support us in caring for our mental health? So if I were to ask you at this point in time, and for those who are here on the live call, if you'd like to add in something on the chat, please feel free to do so. I may note it or I might have to go back to it a little bit later. But how has your mental health been during this time of COVID, with this isolation, with the shifting of roles you play in life, with the loss of security, of familiarity, of routine, right? So if there are thoughts that might come up, like what mental health concerns have you noticed around you or within you? And for many of us, these words might feel or sound familiar. There's that sense of helplessness, exhaustion, overwhelm, right? And there's conflict within and around. And then there are the mental health concerns like depression, anxiety, sense of isolation, even suicidal tendencies or ideations and trauma. And again, I acknowledge the value of medical interventions when needed. But when we equip ourselves with tools such as mindfulness, coming into presence, being aware of our response and really recognizing our nervous system, then things can change. So I'm sharing this particular talk because, like I said, for me in the beginning, I really dismissed mindfulness because it felt like, it can't solve anything. But it is when I started practicing mindfulness that I saw bigger change happen. And this is, as I said, as Amy had introduced, this is when awareness change happens, when we become aware, right? So just for little information, especially for those who, like me, like information before getting into something and perhaps are looking for a little more structure in this practice, which may feel rather abstract or unstructured at times. When we talk of stress, and especially in this pandemic, or in general for that matter, when we are under chronic stress, it really affects our brain. And when we allow our brain to not be just on medication, but when our brain is on mindfulness, big things happen. There are new pathways that can be created, new skills that can be learned. And also, we shift from that fix it mode or that needing to do something about it to being able to sit with discomfort, to realize and to come into our present reality and be okay with it. So not going to read through this. I'm just putting it out there for those who do like to read and have reference points. But yeah, so the practice of mindfulness can be supportive. Okay. And one thing that really shifted for me, you can find these videos on YouTube. There was a video on neuroplasticity. Like I said, the academic in me really likes this information, right? Because it gives me resources or tools to make sense of what I am experiencing. And I think that's what mindfulness really encourages us to do, to come into that present moment, to become aware. And we don't really need to fix it, to solve it, or to define it, but it does lay the groundwork for that. So when we start retraining the brain, many things start shifting. And my mindfulness practice really started with a gratitude approach. So maybe it's not our typical sitting down and breathing and paying attention, but as Eileen had shared earlier, there's a point of focus, which might not necessarily be the point anyway, right? But I started with a gratitude practice, and that's when I saw that I could retrain my brain. And that started because I was having a particularly bad day, one that I wanted to erase from memory and never remember. But I didn't want to go to sleep that night feeling bad, right? And because I was on my fix it mode, and instead of just accepting and allowing myself to feel and sit with that discomfort, I said, okay, I'm going to pick 5 things that went well for me today. And I started doing that on a daily basis. And then at first it felt very mechanical, but soon I started to see that my experiences became okay. Not that things were okay, but the way I experienced discomfort was different. I didn't fight against the discomfort anymore. Well, not always. Sometimes I still do, right? But there was this space to allow myself to see that and to be okay with it. And that's where the practice of it is what it is comes in for me. Yeah. And so when we think about mental health and how mindfulness can be such a valuable tool, what it really does for us is first, it gives us that sense of awareness and tools for emotional regulation. And when I say regulating our emotions, this does not mean denying our feelings, changing it just because we have to, right? But being able to regulate and navigate in a space that might be uncomfortable for a little bit as we expand our capacity to respond to discomfort. And I'll share a little bit of that later when I talk about the window of tolerance. Also, mindfulness can allow us to come into this sense of presence and the present moment. Most importantly, it also gives us the opportunity to connect to the self as well as the others. And I feel that this is very important because while meditation might feel like an isolated or individual practice, it is a space for community and support as well. And I'm a big believer that individual well being is anchored also on this collective sense of well being. So that's a bit of information at this point in time. So I'm going to pause here. And I do know I have about 10-15 minutes left. So I'm going to pause here and take you through a short practice. Yes, I'm going to stop screen sharing for a moment so that there's less distractions. You're welcome to have a piece of paper close by if you would like, or you might just mentally take note of what's going on. So this will be a short guided practice with a few opportunities for journaling or noting down. So go ahead and arrange your body in any comfortable position that works for you. And again, the position is not really what matters. It's that opportunity to come into this space of presence and the present moment. So if it feels useful for you, you might land your feet on the floor if you're sitting on a chair. Or you might notice what support your body needs at this time to move towards 5 to 10% more comfort. For some of us, that might mean closing down the eyes gently. And for others, it might mean anchoring your gaze softly on something that might feel easeful for you. I'm just taking a couple of breaths here to note any sensations that might be present in your physical body. Perhaps acknowledging as well any thoughts that might be in your space. And knowing that it's okay to have these thoughts and that you don't need to fix them or change them or let them go. They're just there. And as you become aware of this present space, I invite you, and again, an invitation is something you're welcome to take or to leave behind if that feels better. I invite you to just take note of all these things. And maybe if it feels right for you, jot it down on a piece of paper. What sensations, thoughts, experiences are present. And then from here, I'm going to invite, again, it's an invitation. You might come into it, or you may choose to just witness it. The invitation here is to recall a situation that was on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being very mild, 10 being very extreme. So on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe a level 3, something that might have irritated you or have brought you a slight sense of discomfort. Try to recall that moment with as little or as much detail as you'd like. Again, just a level 3, so a slight irritation, nothing too extreme. And as you recall that incident or that situation, can you notice your breath? Can you notice your body? What sensations might be present? What is the breath like? And again, if it's useful for you, you might note that down on a piece of paper, or you might choose to take a mental note of it instead. And from here, the invitation is to anchor your awareness to your breath at this present moment, right here, right now. Perhaps lengthening the breath slightly to transition from that recollection to arrive into this present space. Maybe you can turn your awareness to the sensation of your feet on the floor or the support holding your body. And just being aware of that. And as you're ready, I invite you to let that go. You may perhaps take a deep breath in through the nose and softly sigh it out through the mouth. And anytime you're ready, you might blink your eyes open. So just checking in on how that particular practice felt for you. And in many ways, this is how we can take mindfulness into supporting our mental and emotional health, bringing ourselves to that awareness of things changing and how we can shift from a reaction to a response. When we shift from that reaction to response by perhaps anchoring to the breath, noticing how that feels, we can come into presence and the present moment where we can welcome ourselves just as we are. And here we move, and I think this was the key element for me. Here we move from introspection, which is something we do a lot in therapy or in psychology, really thinking about our cognitive patterns. We move into interoception, or that sense of being with sensations, embodying the moment, and allowing things to emerge as is needed. Again, I'm going to be remiss if I don't offer this little reminder, especially for those who are experiencing mental health struggles. The mindfulness practice is a wonderful adjunct to therapy. It is a tool that can help in many ways, but please, if you're under the care of a mental health professional or a doctor, invite them into a conversation before doing any major changes. But what it allows us to do really, and this is the last part I want to share with you, is that the mindfulness practice, and we might not necessarily name this in therapy, but essentially this is what we do also. We are training ourselves to expand our capacity to respond to disruptions in life without necessarily needing to fix it or change it. Because let's face it, many things in life, this COVID, for example, there's very little things we can do to change it. Sure, we can practice our safety protocols and our health standards, and that expands our capacity to protect ourselves from infection, but it still exists. So if life is hard, yes, life is hard, but we can expand our capacity to respond to the difficulties of life. So we're not just running by our nervous system response, that fight, flight, or freeze mode, but rather we are recognizing when we are disrupted or deregulated, we come into the breath and we allow ourselves that space for softness, for tenderness, for compassion, right? And in this space, in this expanded window of tolerance, we are able to find smoother sailing, even in choppy waters, right? So I just have one last slide to show with you. I just broke that down in broader context. I think one of the things I want to really share is that mindfulness might not necessarily feel like it's working. And I've had people share that with me. Look, I can't do it because it doesn't feel good for me. It doesn't work. Well, as Eileen had said, it is uncomfortable. It's not always easy, right? And to be honest, at times it can be unnerving. It might bring up some rage. And it does feel different for everybody. And this is where our practice of compassion, not just towards others, but towards ourselves, really come in. And so that's what I'd like to end in. And I know that our next speaker will be sharing about self-compassion. And I hope this gives you a little bit of handles, especially if you're one of those like me who likes cognitive information, and giving it a bit of a body so that when we come into the practice, we can see how when our brain is on mindfulness, many things can happen. Thank you so much for giving me this space, and I'd love to hear from you. So feel free to give comments or questions.
Thanks for that, Ria. That's beautiful teaching. We so appreciate having your professional take as a clinician and a therapist, a psychologist, and especially helpful during these times because it's so confusing for so many people. And just like what Eileen had mentioned, we can't control what's going on. And you also mentioned that, but we can tap into our inner resources to really find some harmony and balance when it's accessible. And we can find those in those moments of stillness and the pause that we can take even when times are really difficult. So thank you so much. And please get in touch with Ria and Eileen. I will be sharing their contact details, or I invite you to share your links and contact details with our audience here on Zoom. And we also have a few people on YouTube. So there's a question that's already waiting for the teachers. I'm going to put that aside until the Q&A portion of our time together. And I will be inviting Tucci. Tucci is a good friend, and I'm looking for her also here. Sorry, I'm looking for her there. She is. I see her. This is like the Brady Bunch rectangles that we've all been so familiar with these days. So I'm going to introduce Tucci formally. So her real name is Margarita. Okay, so Margarita Reyes is a trained teacher for mindful self-compassion through the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion under the School of Medicine at the University of California, San Diego, which is UCSD. She's also a trained teacher for mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, under the Mindfulness Initiative of Singapore Management University and UCSD Mindfulness-Based Professional Training Institute. Her other involvements include being certified mindfulness facilitator under Mindful Leader, a visiting teacher for Mindfulness Asia, Philippine Insight Meditation Community, Circle of Hope Community, and We Thrive Community. She's a facilitator and a trainer for the Conflict Resolution Group and Reintegration of Care and Wholeness. And she's also an accredited meditator and trainer for both the Office of Alternative Dispute Resolution under the Department of Justice and the National Center for Mediation. Okay, so one less T. And under the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or PCCI. And she's also a certified mindfulness teacher for the International Mindfulness Teachers Association, or she's a member of the IMTA. And without taking up too much of this valuable time from Tucci and her teachings, I introduce you, Tucci or Margarita Reyes.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Aimee. I actually remember one of my meditation teachers asking me, "What is it that you do again?" I said, "I'm a mediator." And then he goes, "Oh, so you just remove the tea, and then when you want the tea back, you just put it back right in." So I just remember that. Thank you so much, everyone. And I'm excited to be here with people I admire and also people I respect very much, dear teachers that are here. So today I'll talk about how to bring compassion in our practice. Thank you so much, Teacher Ria, for doing the segue already and introducing how to bring compassion in our practice. In fact, when I was sitting and you were leading, it reminded me so much of trauma sensitive mindfulness and the works of David Treleaven, which I highly respect, and I love his teachings. And when you were leading, there's like, I want to attend Ria's class. Please let me know. Okay, and of course, Eileen as well. So allow me to share just one slide. Oh. So this is just one. Can everybody see that? Yeah, the yin and yang? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So today's practice is about bringing the tender side of compassion in mindfulness and also the fierce side of compassion. If you can see here, there are actually two sides, which is what Joan Halifax calls strong back, soft front. And one of the challenges in life, add on the pandemic, is how to be with ourselves. My practice started with, I remember Ria sharing earlier that her practice started with gratitude. Mine started because of a very, very harsh and judgmental inner critic. It was so loud. And I heard it every day. I can't even tell you how many times I hear it, or I used to hear it in one day. I'm not saying I don't hear it anymore, but when I hear it, there are some things that I can access, some resources, some skills, or even some practices that I would like to invite if you wish to practice with me. So this is the work of Dr. Neff and Dr. Germer. So Kristen Neff and Christopher Germer. And when they started with mindful self-compassion years back, they basically did a lot of research and not discounting the fact of many, many teachers even before them who actually brought in the quality of being kind and being compassionate to ourselves. So let's put this in a very quick exercise. I'd like to invite you to hold a fist. And just in your own mind, if you'd like to close your eyes, doing that. In your own mind, asking yourself, how does this feel? With these few seconds that my fist is closed, what am I feeling? And now I'd like to invite you to bring in the other palm and open it and just let the closed one, the closed fist, rest. Resting on this open palm. And as you breathe, how is this? And part of our mindfulness practice is also honoring and respecting our moment to moment experience. No right, no wrong, just how it is now. For instance, Was that comforting when the palm was actually holding, embracing? So that actually was a gesture of both the yin and the yang, meaning to say it's still both our hands, but knowing, okay, one can be fierce, can be strong, can be tense even, can be courageous, or whatever adjectives you can bring to that in your own moment. And how about that open palm? Was it soothing? Was it embracing, comforting? And now I'd like to invite you to put your hand on your heart. Just one more brief exercise before we dive into practice. As your hand is on your heart, how is it now to extend the other hand? So if you can see me, the hand is on your heart. Doing this with your eyes open or eyes closed, whatever works for you. How is this as you breathe? I remember a mindful self-compassion teacher trainer, Tina Gibson, calls this hand in my heart, stop. As my hand is in my heart, no. As my hand is in my heart, these are my boundaries. We find ourselves in unprecedented times. So what is very much challenged is something that has surfaced a lot during the pandemic is control. The severe lack of it, the severe lack of control. And when we talk about that and look at our resources, we remember, oh, maybe I can see how I can trust or begin to trust myself and my inner resources. So this practice is actually an invitation how to love ourselves up as we love others up. So when we find ourselves in the state of threat, we have many practices are at our disposal to bring us to a state of equanimity. And what does that mean? A state of balance, a state of resilience, maybe imagining even how we are as rubber bands, like how we can stretch, and then how we can go back, and then how we can stretch again, and then how we can go back. So trusting that we have it in us, that emerging capacity to know our boundaries. That's an example of protecting, providing, motivating, being strong, being courageous, maybe being outspoken, maybe standing up for our values, whatever that may be. And also how we can comfort, soothe ourselves, how we can even validate ourselves, like, I'm hurting, or it's tough right now, or I'm stressed. What can I do? Or how about I'll stop now because it's too much for me. So how to be with ourselves and knowing when to act. So when we meet whatever it takes with love, with kindness, and with compassion, then there is the possibility of transforming that experience. Like the other teachers said earlier, and just adding to the example, how we relate to what triggers us, how we relate to traffic, how we relate to somebody who has bumped us, how we relate to somebody who we see not wearing a mask, or maybe the face shield is up. How do we relate to that? And how are we with ourselves as we hear that mental chatter, as we hear all those notes, even feeling tones like, oh, okay, there's annoyance, okay, there's frustration. So a lot of our uh, self-care strategies, when we talk about that, um, it has a lot to do with downtime. What if we don't have any downtime? What if we're triggered right there and then? What if this person that is communicating with me has his mask here, and so on? So, without further ado, I'll dive into practice now so you can experience it for yourself of how this is, how to be with ourselves, but at the same time, acting. So, inviting each of you now to find a posture that is comfortable for you and also supported. You could be lying down, you could be leaning, you could have an erect spine, whatever works for you. And when you're ready, closing your eyes, either fully or partially. Taking a few deep, purposeful breaths. And bringing awareness to the beginning of each in-breath and the end of it, and the beginning of the out-breath and the end of it. Noticing how it comes in and goes out. This capacity to breathe, always with us, ever present, so alive in us, and human. And finding your own natural breathing rhythm. And now bringing curiosity to the imprint. And what do I mean by that? Your points of contact. How does it feel when you're sitting or lying? What is it like? Where are your feet resting? Your legs? Your buttocks? And if you can, even feeling your weight. Gravity. This gift. This gift is a reminder of our connection to something much larger, much bigger. And as we bring our awareness to our bodies, knowing that we are lovingly connected, this body, all its systems, not fragmented, but one whole. And now inviting you to bring to mind the most loving and warm hands cradling you as you imagine support, holding your dear body and how it is to be held. Just surrendering to being held. And if you like, doing a gesture that's soothing and supportive for you. Or if it feels okay, you can even rest your hand on where you feel stress usually. Maybe the shoulders, maybe the nape, maybe the chest. And see if you can imagine that these hands wanting embrace, maybe wanting what we call, oh, there's so much skin hunger now because of the pandemic, the lack of embrace, that these hands are capable of giving it now to the self, that you are now capable of giving this to yourself. Perhaps even imagining kindness and compassion flowing from the hand to the tip of the fingers, all the way to where you need it the most. And as you breathe in, letting an intention ride for yourself, maybe breathing in kindness, breathing in love, or even rest, whatever it is you need. And now, as you breathe out, imagining who you wish to give this to. Maybe it's somebody who's struggling, maybe it's somebody in pain, maybe it's somebody who lacks kindness or compassion. As you breathe out, you may wish to include a word, could even be an image towards that other person, or persons, or even living beings. And as you continue to breathe, for this last part, if you can explore, what do you need the most now? What is it that you need? Do I need, perhaps, as I breathe in, one for me and one for you? Love for me, love for you. You may even explore specific ratios depending on your need. For instance, 5 for me, 1 for you. Wanting to give or needing to give compassion and kindness to the self. It could even be 1 million for me and 1 for you. Especially when we find ourselves overwhelmed or challenged, or even when we are in our threat defense system. And if you find that it's an equal flow that you wish to give, that's okay too. And it can even be if you have more resources and wanting to give more. It could be 1 for me, 700,000 for you. Just giving you a moment to explore in this specific time of your life, what is it that you need? And just feeling our breath, this life, this human body, this process of both giving and receiving. Giving the act of breathing and receiving what we need the most. And before I formally end this practice, just sharing a line from Bar Shem Tov. And this is about having our own back. Let me fall if I must. The one I will become will catch me. Let me fall if I must. The one I will become will catch me. Strong back, soft front. And now transitioning back to our breath. Back to your space, the physical space. Opening your eyes when you're ready. And now inviting you, if you can, to give the body what it needs by perhaps moving the neck, your shoulders, much needed stretch. Or even a sigh. I love that. Like, just breathing out. So a few more lines. There are a few lines that I'd like to share of this balance, this from a state of threat to a state of equanimity, and remembering that we have all of these resources. A few lines from specific teachers. And if you have a favorite, then let me know also by chatting it in. So Rumi says, when we still our minds, we can hear what our heart is whispering. And the writer Jane O'Shea says, what is needed is always right here. John Donahue says, a blessing for the one who is exhausted, remembering that we can give ourselves that blessing as well. And last but not the least, let me fall if I must, and the one I will become will catch me. Knowing that we have it in us always. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucci, for being here again. And is this your third year of being with Katahimikan? I think so. So, okay, so
I'm not sure.
I feel like it is the third year. But anyway, thank you for that. It's always lovely to practice with you. And I love that you really immersed us in the practice, and everyone's so grateful. So I do have a question in YouTube. We have quite a few people watching live on YouTube, and The Beast is asking which book you're referring to. Do you want to unmute yourself? Tucci there.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question because I was reading the chat and just absorbing.
Okay, so
because I wanted to. This is beautiful. So can I just share what Eileen? It's also a beautiful beautiful statement of equanimity. What is the way? What's in the way is the way. So I was actually immersed in that. I said, "Oh, that's so lovely." Okay. Can you please repeat the question?
There's a question from YouTube because we have
Mhm.
people watching in YouTube as well. And I want to acknowledge that there are people there watching live, and there are some questions that have come up. And I want to address this one immediately because The Beast, his YouTube name, is asking which book you're referring to.
Which book?
Yeah, he says, what book? Okay.
What
So I'm asking.
book? What book?
It says there two of them. Oh, he says he needs
Two of
this
them.
book.
The book. Oh, did I mention the book? Is it the book of David Treleaven's work?
Okay, so
the one. Okay, the one for trauma sensitive mindfulness, is that one? Okay, so I believe that it was also posted here by Eileen, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So please, for more of his work and even his book, he has a lovely book, please go to davidtreleaven.com. So I need to spell that because at first I couldn't even pronounce it. It's David, how it's usually spelled, and then it's TRELEAVEN.com.
Okay, thanks for that. And then I did also already share that in our YouTube live chat box. So please find that link in the chat box. And there's also some comments like Jacqueline Francis is saying that she really needed that self-compassion. So yeah, and then I think, The Beast was clarifying that he wanted to know what lines you're reading, like what book you're reading the lines from. So maybe we can, if you could share with us your resources, that would be fabulous. And then I can put them in the chat box on YouTube. Okay, so thanks so much, Tucci. I'm really appreciative, and there's a lot of messages in the comments box that's really just giving you a lot of gratitude and appreciation. So a lot of us need this practice, most especially. So thank you. And I would like to invite our teachers and co-founders to join this space. So I'm going to bring all of us in here. And Beth, not really sure. There you are. Your video is on. Add you in here. And there is a question I invite everyone here that's on Zoom with us right now, and then those who are on YouTube to please just put in the chat box any questions that you might have. And this one is from Josie, who has been with us on YouTube Live, and she is asking, what practice do you suggest for a beginner who has a condition that's long-time schizophrenia or extreme anxiety? So I'm feeling like maybe that question is mostly directed to our doctor, Rhea. and soon to be Dr. Eileen. But yet, I would, I think that if you have any insight on this, Ria, that would be fabulous.
Not a doctor. I'm a psychologist by profession, but I feel that it would be best to have the support of a mental health professional if this individual is living with schizophrenia and extreme anxiety, because as the book that Tucci had shared, some traumas, some certain mental health conditions do need a little sensitivity and awareness, and perhaps the mental health practitioner would be the best starting point for them.
Thank you. Okay, so
there's another question you may have missed from Marisa Husay. Will this work for a poverty-stricken grieving family? I think maybe the compassion practice for Tucci.
So I would say it also depends. Yes, in general, but it depends also on any human being. Like so, for instance, if it's a family, um, it the possibility of starting with perhaps even just gestures, or maybe even let's say how they can be with each other. So there are many things, because the specific question is about a family. That's the reason why the answer may be simple, but it can also be complicated. And I don't really want to say yes, for sure it's gonna work. But one thing that when it comes to mindfulness is first and foremost to acknowledge the grief. That's the first thing that we if to invite the family is, I am grieving. And sometimes that in itself has already so much power. Just to acknowledge that, wow, that's one of the most difficult human emotions. And I'd like to invite Eileen and Ria to chip in as well.
Okay, I'll chip in because this is something that usually gets me on my soapbox, and Amy knows this. We live in circumstances which, for better or for worse, have really put mindfulness into the forefront. And so now it's sold as a fix to everything from hair loss to erectile dysfunction. And while that's great for all of us here who teach these practices, there's just so much danger that comes with this blanket application. And so the questions that were raised about, is this appropriate for anxiety? Is this appropriate for schizophrenia? Is this something that we should bring to people who are poverty stricken, who've just gone through a calamity? And by all means, at different stages in their journeys towards healing, it will be helpful as an adjunct, as a complement, but it's really not one size fits all. And I think the danger is because it's so deceptively easy. Why do you need credentials to teach this? People are just breathing. But Tucci has touched on this, Rhea has touched on this. At the end of the day, it's really just because when we sit down in silence, it invites psychological material to surface. And depending on how well people are resourced, they're either going to be flooded, which means more damage is going to happen, or they're going to be ready. So really, it's all about context, like Tucci has pointed out. So with families who are stricken by grief, it depends. Do they need to address more basic needs first? Do they need people to feed them? Do they need shelter? And maybe we can think about their resilience later on. So, and Ria really hit the nail on the head. We do need to recognize that this needs to be paired with professionals with a certain amount of expertise. So that's me on my soapbox. Thanks for indulging me.
Did you want to add to that, Ria?
Sure, I'm going to hop in as well and also acknowledge that, a certain level of privilege comes into this practice, right? So we can't really approach it with that idea that it is a fix all for everybody and I know better, etc. And when we really dismantle these elements of privilege, of supremacy, and all of that, then this is where we come into spirit and really connection. And I think, again, coming into a soapbox, as Eileen had said, for me, that was one thing that stopped me from practicing in the beginning, was that initial pushback that I felt, because people would say, oh, all you need to do is meditate and you're not meditating enough, which is why you are anxious, which is why you're suffering, because you are. But, you need to acknowledge that everybody has their own process. And let's face it, in the Philippines, for example, and I think this might be true also in other places, language for one. How many of us are able and comfortable to lead these practices in Filipino or in our native tongue, right? And that in itself makes it less accessible for people who might not have resources, whether it's financial resources, the educational resources, experience based, right? And we want to introduce it in an accessible manner. That might be a whole different discussion, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks for that, Ria. That's really a good point. And I just would like to share with you that UCLA had reached out to me to translate 5 or 6 meditations into Filipino. And that's something I'm working on right now. And that will be available in the UCLA Mindful Awareness Research Program website in the very near future. So please stay tuned. We're really expanding access to this practice and other practices as well, because mindfulness is an umbrella for really just bringing more awareness into our lives. And with the mindful self-compassion, the self-compassion practice that we do, it does require some mindfulness, right? So it's like really like to be able to touch every single part of our lives, including the eating and the brushing the teeth, and then, right, like the pain in the body and all of the things that we experience, and bringing awareness to these parts and not pushing them away. And it can get uncomfortable, certainly, as we have mentioned before. It's not a fix-all, and yet it is really life-changing. And I think that that's really it's hard for people to commit to it, because people look for a Band-Aid, like, a quick fix. And this is not one of those. This is something that needs commitment, and this is something that really needs tending to and loving, and the kind of love that we all deserve, for ourselves and others. So I really, there's a lot of beautiful things on the chat. Dina, did you want to say anything, or Beth? We are getting near the time, and I always try to finish on time because it's important that we honor each other and respect each other's schedules, and we are going to be doing another practice, which is a metta, or a loving kindness practice, or you could say just even kindness. And I want to just bring it out there, maybe Dina, would you like to be the one to share that? Would you be okay? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
You did.
I did.
I mean,
No. Sorry, Eileen?
I think Beth was raising her hand a while ago.
Yeah, Beth was raising. I was going to say.
I'd just like to add with what everybody has said. I don't have any credentials. My credential is experiential. I all of the darkness before, from whatever psychological. I think what they said was really right. There's no one size fits all. I think at the end of the day, what's important is really mindfulness, in a way that let us just be there, give compassion to everyone who needs it without any judgment. I think that's where we should all be coming to and coming from. Yeah. because that really helps, just being there, listening without any judgment. That's going to be the support that whoever needs that will tremendously want to and be thankful for.
Thanks, Beth.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. And it's like Reyes said in the chat box, lived experience is crucial. And so she's really just, like giving, value to what you just said. It's what we do with, us sitting on the cushion or sitting on the chair or actually showing up for our practice is what matters most.
Yeah.
So I think
I remember you, Amy. I was so in a bad place. You were just there. I sat, meditated, and after, well, there's so much peace and happiness.
Thank you. So there's a lot of beautiful messages of gratitude in the chat box, and Dina, if you don't want to, it's okay. Or if you're not quite
Not
prepared.
that I don't want to, but the place where I'm at now, it's a little bit noisy. So I think it will be better if you lead it and there's no distractions.
Yeah. Okay.
As part of the whole video.
Okay. Yes, I understand. So being up in the province, in the mountains, that's one of those challenges that we have. And I just also want to really thank you, because this time every year is a special time, because this is also my birthday party, my yearly birthday party tomorrow. I turn 47. And it's always such a beautiful thing to celebrate with you. And I wanted to announce this after my birthday, but I'm going to, for the sake of really just bringing community into our experience right now. And we are actually building a retreat center up in the mountains. So I know, Dina, what it's like not to have to have the frustration of not having internet access, but it is most conducive for practice. And so I will be sharing more with you where we're building this retreat center for mindfulness, and it's gorgeous and set in the mountains. And this will be a place where we can practice silent meditation together from really special teachers and honoring tradition. So please stay tuned for this official announcement. And I invite you now to please get comfortable as we practice kindness or goodwill. And if you want to, and if it's accessible to you, you may place one or two hands on your heart, your chest, wherever feels like it's a place where you can really connect to your heart and the goodness that's inherent in all of us. And if you'd like to, you can also close your eyes and take a deep breath into your heart space and create some spaciousness within as we ripple out these good intentions of kindness. First, beginning with sending and giving well wishes and thoughts to ourselves by repeating these phrases silently in our minds. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe from harm and danger. May my life flow with ease. Just allowing those words, those phrases settle and really just be felt within your physical body, and notice the effects of that in your feelings, your heart, your mind. And then bringing an expanded awareness to include all beings, all human beings, all two-legged, four-legged, multi-legged, and some that actually don't even have legs, beings underground, above ground, in the seas, to your left, to your right, to the front and the back, above and below, all around, all beings without exception. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be safe from harm and danger. May all beings know peace. May we all awaken together. And breathing in, letting these words settle, noticing sensations that might be present, feeling the breath, breathing into your heart and creating spaciousness within, around your heart to expand to all corners as far as you can imagine, radiating this goodwill to all. May all benefit from the time that we spent together here, practicing and learning and building this community. Thank you so much for your practice, and thank you so much for being here. And with another breath, I invite you to fill up your body all the way down to the soles of your feet with this in-breath, and feel the soles of your feet grounding to this earth that we all stand on. And as you exhale, bringing the intention and transition into our experience as you gently allow your eyes to open, taking your time. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. And I see all the chats that may all conflicts be settled peacefully and harmoniously. May justice reign. May peace and harmony emanate from everyone's hearts and minds. Thank you, Attorney Salisa. And may we have Katahimikan, not only in the Philippines, but throughout the world. So thanks, everyone. I send you all love from my home to yours. And I appreciate our teachers, Eileen, Rhea, and Tucci. And I appreciate Dina and Beth, my partners in peace. We'll continue to work together here, and I appreciate all of you. And anyone else, please unmute yourselves and say what you need to say.
I think someone wants to know how to reach Tucci.
How to reach the three of us, actually. It says here.
Yeah, but Eileen and Rhea already had theirs posted earlier.
Oh,
so emails.
Okay.
So if you want to reach the other teachers, just read the chat. It's all there.
Yes, and I've already shared. I hope you don't mind. I've shared your contact also to our audience on YouTube Live for those who would like to connect with you. And thank you, everybody. Where is it, Tucci? Do I see it here? No. Dina and Beth, if you have also something like, how can people reach out to you if they would like to? Okay. Okay, awesome. I'm seeing everyone's contact details. I'm going to be sharing on YouTube. So I don't want to keep everyone. Please, I invite you to unmute yourselves and bring your voices into this space and say goodbye. And yeah, I'm gonna put it on gallery mode so I can see and hear everybody.
As Goenkaji says, noble silence is over. You may speak.
Thank you, everybody, for
Thank you
joining.
so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you po.
Very helpful.
Thank you. Let's have a group shot. Group shot.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Turn on your videos first, so we'll have. We don't have. Hey, Olga. Thank you, and
Thank you
Kate.
so much for
Nice
this
to see you
very
here,
Yeah,
Nina.
please turn on
Also.
your
Thank you, Nina.
please turn on your videos so we can get you in the group photo.
Olga, hello.
I'll remove our spotlights dito, Aimee, so
Ah, yeah.
that we
Yes, thank
we
you.
can put
I
everyone
appreciate
in the
that.
gallery.
Nati.
Thank you, Tucci. Hello.
And so
Okay.
gallery view.
All right, smile.
Who's taking the shot?
Thank you.
I am. Wait.
Hi, me.
Ulit. Okay, everyone. Smile. There. Okay, it
Thank
made
you.
that click noise. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you again, Tucci.
Have fun in
Yeah.
Bataan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks to Tucci and Ria for guesting.